So today we're going to be talking about arguably one of the best new manga yet again. I've done about 2-3 videos on this and I'm talking about it again. The latest, I want to say 6 chapters since we last talked about The Promised Neverland, and my gosh, because people were arguing there's a possibility that this series isn't even going to address the actual whole premise of the escape, or at the very least, if it does happen, it's going to be towards the end. But 30 something chapters in, and we've gotten there, people. We've gotten to that point. Promised Neverland, just to go brief thoughts regarding its potential and whatnot before we jump into talking about the story. I definitely see this being a big one. I definitely see once it gets an anime, get somebody like, you know, a Madhouse. I know that's a typical answer to give, like, yeah, Madhouse. Get a Madhouse, get a Studio Bones, get somebody that really can adapt this properly, and I think that we have a recipe for success. I think The Promised Neverland has so much potential, and from what we've seen thus far, the strategic aspects of the storytelling is magnificent. The characters, everything that Promised Neverland has done has been showcasing that this could be something huge. Like, you know, they don't push it because it's not the action story, it's not the My Hero Academia, the Black Clover, or if you're not unfamiliar with those series, it's not the Naruto's, One Pieces, and Bleach, you know what I'm saying? But the quality that it has, it could potentially be on a Death Note level. And Death Note transcended for a short story, for a short, you know, amount of time that it was around. It transcended into a global phenomenon. And to this day, I mean, we're getting a Death Note live action film from Netflix. So if it could reach that market and tap into that pulse of fandom, then Promised Neverland, from what I've seen thus far, I don't see why it can't be the next Death Note, because it's rocking it. Let's jump into it. So of course, when we last left off, apparently Norman was fucked. Seemingly he died, and until this point, we still don't really know. I mean, we're under the assumption that he's dead, right? I still don't want to completely believe it. I do think that at some given point we'll see Norman survive somehow, whether he made a deal to be a papa, so to speak, to, you know, be a breeding machine or whatever the case may be. I would not be surprised if Norman comes back at some given point. But the very next chapter after where we left off was where Emma had that fucking rape face of she's not giving up. She made that evil face, and I believe that's where we left off. Don't quote me. Maybe we did discuss that, but that's at that point where I was like, okay, great development right there. So, you know, we had that bit. Then of course we got to the point where we had a time skip. It was about like 2 months, I believe, you know, in between where everything left off to where we're at now. And ultimately Emma and Ray, it seems as though for that point Emma and Ray had given up. They really wasn't talking. Mama wasn't suspecting anything, but we find out a shit ton of stuff where on one hand Ray was kind of like, I'm gonna help them escape, but I just want to die and I want to fuck over Mama in the process. And then of course we had Emma rounding up the troops, getting all the kids together to make sure that they escape. Now, one of the things where I felt it was a good compromise in a sense, it felt as though to a certain degree to do this, Emma had to sacrifice not necessarily her values, but ultimately some of what her goal is regarding leaving some of the kids behind when they make their escape, and ultimately saying we'll come back for you in a couple years and trying to plan it out. I feel as though that was a good compromise in a sense, because in reality what Norman said and what Ray said and what anybody that was a part of the plan aside from Emma thought was, we're not going to make it if we try and take all these kids, especially we're going to take 4-year-olds. How the fuck are we going to run from monsters, creatures, adults with 4-year-olds? So the fact that she made that decision to say, okay, we're going to come back for them though, that was a good thing. And I hope it's a while before we get back and come back to him. I hope there's a lot more that they have to go on outside of the plantation, so to speak, because it will give for good development. And whenever we do come back and, you know, we have to face this problem again, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Now, it could lead to catastrophe, disaster. When they come back, most of the kids that they left behind are dead, and that'll break Emma and be some crazy shit. But, you know, only time will tell. And speaking of, yes, we finally, which I was like, because I really thought that the series was going to potentially end with their escape. I didn't know if they were going to, you know, how they were going to do things, because it felt as though not necessarily it was being dragged out, but it was going for a long time of like, when they're going to try their escape, when is it going to happen? And we finally got it. And let's talk about Phil real quick, because Phil, he played an interesting role, and the burden that is on his shoulders is very heavy, but I did see some people complaining that they felt as though Phil was disappointing because he didn't do anything to stop Mama from going after Emma and them. I mean, at the end of the day, if Phil would have been able to stop Mama from doing what she wanted to do, then that would make Mama, that would devalue her greatly. It would make her look like, you scrub, a little fucking kid is able to stop you, you're pathetic. So Phil, he's having a big challenge and a burden again of putting all this together, and he has 2 years essentially to get all these kids ready so that when Emma comes back, they can all bounce with her. So I feel as though he didn't live up to a lot of my expectations in regards to, like, I thought maybe he could be a big time trader. I thought he was rocking with Mama this entire time, so he didn't live up to that. But the fact that this little ass kid has to have all this on his mind for years to come, that is a big burden. That's something to, you know, think about. Like, yeah, I guess he didn't live quite up to my expectations, but he's still a little smart motherfucker. And then I ain't gonna lie, Ray sacrificing his ear to get away, to put the little trap or whatever, burning himself, well, trying to burn himself, all of that shit was great. Like, Promised Neverland has one of those things where, and I was talking about this the other day in a certain regard, that montages, you know, highlights are some of the best things that are attractive to a story or to, you know, a presentation. And the Promised Neverland, I feel as though every chapter brings forth a nice montage of content, in a sense, or epic moments that is going to make you think, yo, this is hype. But it's also bringing the quality writing along with it. It's like you're getting the good shit, the setups, the build-ups, the characterization, the plot twists. You're getting all that, but you're getting a big epic moment on top of it. And especially these last months or so, month and a half worth of chapters, it's been like that. It's like we get a good setup, good writing, and then bam, Ray is about to light himself on fire. He's fucking going crazy. Then after that, we get the plot twist that him and Emma basically staged the coup, so to speak, and they're figuring things out, and he ends up cutting off his ear, or they cut off his ear so that they could trick Mama. Like, a lot of different things there. I felt as though this is good shit. You're getting a highlight, but you're also getting quality writing. And a lot of stories that I read, or I've read for that matter, struggle with that. Is either they give you a boring chapter, or occasionally they can do that, or they give you a really exciting chapter and it doesn't, you know, it lacks substance. And I think Promised Neverland is bringing you the best of both worlds for the most part on a weekly basis. Not every chapter is great or phenomenal, but from what we've seen these last 6, again, I want to say, has been crazy. Now, a couple of questions. For starters, what's going to happen to Mama? Because now that she failed and they got away, those creatures, assuming that they really are creatures, because to be honest with you, I've had a theory, what if they look like creatures, but they're not actually really monsters, and we find out later on that maybe it's just humans with some sort of disguises, or humans that kind of have mechanics on them to look like creatures. I don't know, just a crazy idea. Maybe if it's just all normal people, I feel as though that'd be an interesting twist, but doubtful, because we did see them like devouring, I think, a kid towards the beginning of the manga. It might have been chapter 1. It's been a while, 30 some chapters, you know what I'm saying, but that'd be interesting. But Mama might have to suffer some consequences for what happened, because that's prime rib right there. That's like if somebody just lost thousands of dollars worth of steaks. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna be pissed at them. If these are creatures that are very brutal and violent, Mama's gonna get some very, very big problems on her hands regarding those kids leaving. Who knows if they get back, if Mama will even be alive, if she'll be missing limbs, because there's gonna be repercussions for her blunder right there, a big time. Like, especially if she had her own goals, because we see in a flashback with Mama that at one given point she attempted to escape. She actually went, and then she looked down and she saw she couldn't escape because, like, you know, that drop would kill her. So she said fuck it and went back. So we know that Mama doesn't really want this situation either. She's kind of like the rest of the kids, is that she just gave up essentially. The difference between like Emma and her, Emma right now is still trying. She still wants to, and she seemingly succeeded in escaping. Mama didn't. Although I wouldn't be surprised because of how knowledgeable Mama is. Maybe Mama went through some of the similar things as Emma. You could argue that maybe Mama did escape, but at the end of the day, they still caught her at some given point. That's something interesting to toy around with there. And I mean, Promised Neverland, there's so much to say, and yet you don't really have to say much other than it's great. You know what I'm saying? Like, 30-something chapters in, and I still feel as though it's bringing the heat. It's not getting the love and respect I feel it deserves. Shonen Jump really isn't pushing it like they're pushing the action series. But that's Shonen Jump, and, you know, it is what it is. That's how they do things, you know what I'm saying? They got a diamond in the rough, and until that diamond jumps out of the ground and screams, they're just like, okay, action series, fuck that shit. And also, people are arguing whether or not we're going to have a time skip. I think a time skip in the sense of just completely jumping 2 years later after they just finished escaping would be horrible. Unless they're rushing to end it because it's bombing in Japan and no one gives a fuck. A time skip right now would be terrible because we waited 30-something chapters, however many months, like half a year basically of chapters to escape, only to come right back with a time skip. I think right now we need to explore the world, see what the world is like. This is a great opportunity for some immense world building, finding out what's truly out there aside from where we've been confined to and restricted to. Is like, okay, we can explore, you know, what the other side of things is and find out more about why they're in these circumstances to begin with. Maybe the world is normal outside of here, or maybe it's a complete wasteland. Maybe there's monsters all over. So there's a lot of different things we can do leading back to the return, which, I mean, maybe 6 months from now we could return, but if we do a time skip right now, for me, I'm gonna feel like it was a wasted opportunity to do so many other great things. So hopefully that's not the case, and especially I think, if anything, the return to the plantation is going to be the end now. Now that we've gotten to this point where we have escaped, I think we should get 6 months, even possibly a year of trials and tribulations, maybe even more, and then we return, because unless this is going to be a super short manga, a time skip right now would be horrible and I wouldn't like it. But we gotta wait and see. And with all that being said, again, Promised Neverland, awesome. We finally escaped. Immense progression, immense development, and I'm looking forward to seeing what these kids go through next, because now we got a whole squad lineup. I mean, I don't expect every kid to survive, and not to sound cynical or fucked up, I hope they don't all survive, because it's like a survival horror in a way, and if everybody survives, then it kind of makes it seem like, what was the risk again? How did they all, you know, it's going to be very ridiculous in a sense. So some of the kids do have to bite the big one at some given point, which will push forth Emma into an even darker place, but also help her to develop. So a lot of good things there. Definitely want to know what you guys think about their escape. How did you feel about that? How did you feel about Phil and his role in all this? What do you think is going to happen to Mama now that she fucked up big time? And your overall thoughts of the Promised Neverland for the past month and a half or two. Like, it's just been great. It's just been really fucking high quality shit for Shonen Jump. They need to push it more. And on a side note, I wouldn't be surprised if it does finally start to blow up, because we have all those plantations around there. We would probably get a spin-off side story of kids from one of those other plantations. That's just a thought that came to my mind. Like, if Promised Neverland blows up, expect a spin-off from a kid from another side of there that's kind of trying to go through the same things and unsuccessful. But that's all I have for this one. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you liked anything I had to say or enjoyed the video, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you want more from me, make sure to subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and stalk my Facebook to get more when the video ends. I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day.